dark where secrets fall.
Welcome, brave listeners, to Sleepy Horror Tales. Tonight, we delve into a chilling narrative set against the backdrop of Halloween, a night steeped in ancient lore where the veil between our world and the spectral realm is said to fray. It is on such nights that legends whisper of restless spirits seeking connection, perhaps even a foothold in the land of the living. Prepare yourselves as we unfold the disquieting story of the Halloween tenant, a tale where festive illusion gives way to a terrifying reality. The veil thins on Halloween. Everyone knows that. It's the night when the boundary between our world and whatever lies beyond feels porous, almost non-existent. Legends whisper of spirits slipping through, yearning for a taste of life, sometimes even seeking a living vessel to inhabit once more. People dress as monsters, ghosts and ghouls, a tradition born from fear, either to scare away malevolent entities or to blend in, disguising themselves as one of the spectral horde to avoid becoming a host. Over time, fear gave way to festivity. Costumes became less about warding off evil and more about fantasy, fun, and pop culture. Princesses, superheroes, and movie monsters joined the ghouls on suburban streets. The holiday, even stripped of its most ancient dread, held a unique power, a night where the ordinary rules felt suspended. But some places hold onto older energies, deeper currents that run beneath the surface of modern life. Even without specific ancient traditions tying spirits to this particular date, restless souls exist, lingering shadows clinging to the edges of the living world. And sometimes, on a night like Halloween, when the air crackles with manufactured fright and genuine anticipation, the lines blur in ways no one truly expects. This is what happened to Helen. Helen's new apartment, usually a testament to her hard-won success with its clean lines and city views, was now a crypt. She'd gone all out for her combined housewarming and Halloween party. Fake cobwebs dripped from ceilings, plastic skulls grinned from bookshelves, and strategically placed spotlights cast long, dancing shadows. Severed limbs and rubber bats hung in doorways. She'd even scattered some prop gold coins and faux ancient amulets around, grave goods, she joked, for authenticity. For years, Helen and her friends had celebrated Halloween at bars or office parties. This year, she wanted to christen her own space, make her mark. At 28, Helen was the picture of fierce independence. Sharp, driven, and successful, she dragged herself out of a childhood marred by poverty and fear, building a life that was entirely her own. She prided herself on her rationality, her ability to compartmentalize the lingering shadows of her past. That past was a wound, yes, but it was also the fuel that propelled her forward. Tonight, though, was about forgetting, about celebrating with her closest friends, Liam, Chloe, and Zoe. Together, they were transforming her chic apartment into a genuinely unsettling haunted house. By 6 p.m., Liam, Chloe, and Zoe were already there, tweaking decorations and getting into costume. Liam was meticulously wrapping himself in stained linen strips, aiming for a desiccated Egyptian mummy. Chloe, ever the horror aficionado, was applying intricate makeup to become a spectral, weeping ghost reminiscent of Japanese horror films she loved, her long black hair strategically draped. Zoe was going full zombie, complete with ripped clothes and disturbingly realistic latex wounds oozing fake gore. They were nearly finished when they turned to see Helen emerge from her bedroom. A collective gasp went through the small group. Her costume was simple, torn, dirt-stained clothes, but the effect was chillingly real. Dark, ugly bruises mottled her arms and face. Raw-looking scratches crisscrossed her skin, some appearing alarmingly fresh, glistening slightly under the dim light. The corner of her mouth was smeared with a dark substance that looked disturbingly like dried blood. Her eyes, usually bright and focused, seemed distant, haunted. "Helen, wow," Liam breathed, pausing his rapping. "That's intense. The makeup looks incredibly real." Chloe stepped closer, peering at a particularly nasty-looking bruise on Helen's forearm. "Seriously, Helen, how did you get it to look so three-dimensional? And the scratches? It looks like you actually fought a feral cat." Helen just gave a weak, slightly off-kilter smile. "Trade secrets. Gotta commit to the theme, right?" Her friends exchanged uneasy glances. Helen always put effort into her costumes, but this year felt different. There was an unsettling authenticity to her portrayal of victimhood, a rawness that went beyond mere makeup artistry. It was as if she hadn't just dressed up as someone hurt, but had somehow become her. They brushed it off as Helen's dedication to the party, but a sliver of unease remained. By 9 p.m., the apartment was pulsating with costumed bodies, music thumping with a heavy, distorted bass line. The air grew thick with laughter, shrieks, and the artificial fog Helen had strategically pumped into the main room. The carefully curated dim lighting and flickering fake candles transformed the familiar space into something alien, labyrinthine. Helen herself felt a thrill of disorientation. It no longer felt entirely like her apartment. Eerie sound effects, disembodied whispers, rattling chains, mournful cries emanated from hidden speakers, adding another layer to the macabre ambience. Liam, despite being a mummy, seemed to be enjoying adding wolf-like howls to the mix whenever someone least expected it. In one corner of the living room, draped in heavy black cloth, was the entrance to the haunted den, a winding path through darkness designed for maximum jump scares. Friends clad in particularly terrifying costumes hid within its recesses, ready to leap out at unsuspecting guests. Curious and slightly buzzed from her signature witch's brew punch, Helen decided to brave her own creation. The darkness inside was absolute, disorienting. Cold, unseen things brushed against her skin. Sudden bursts of sound made her jump. She stumbled forward, heart pounding, half laughing, half genuinely unnerved. Pausing to catch her breath in a momentarily quiet section, a flash of movement caught her eye. A small figure darted past in the periphery, impossibly small, like a child, pale limbs flashing white, its head seemingly smeared with something dark. It vanished into the oppressive blackness ahead before Helen could fully register it. Ice flooded her veins. A child? None of her friends had children. No one was supposed to bring kids. Her mind raced. Was it a prop? A very short friend playing a prank? It had moved too fluidly, too quickly. Shaken, she scrambled out of the haunted den, blinking in the relative brightness of the main room. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the small figure. Nothing. The unease solidified into genuine fear. This wasn't part of the plan. Grabbing the small microphone connected to the sound system, she cut the music. Hey, hey, everyone. Her voice trembled slightly. Quick question, did anyone see a little kid in the haunted den or anywhere? Silence fell, punctuated by a few confused murmurs. Then, a ripple of laughter started near the back, quickly spreading through the room. Liam, Chloe, and Zoe pushed through the crowd, grinning. Gotcha, Zoe exclaimed, pulling forward a reluctant-looking figure dressed in tattered clothes, their face hidden by matted hair. Meet Sarah. She owed me a favor. The figure looked up, revealing the face of a young woman, definitely an adult, but incredibly petite, barely over 5 feet tall. She waved sheepishly. Sarah's a master of spooky lurking, Liam added, clapping the small woman on the shoulder. We thought the host deserved a special scare. Helen stared, relief washing over her in a dizzying wave. Oh my God, you guys are terrible. She laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. You really got me. Seriously, Sarah, your speed in there was terrifying. The explanation was perfect, the timing impeccable. Just a well-executed prank. Yet, deep down, the image of those pale, fleeting limbs lingered, unsettlingly vivid. The party raged on, well past midnight. Guests began to trickle out, leaving a core group of Helen's closest friends still laughing and sharing spooky stories. Helen, feeling the effects of the fruit punch and the adrenaline come down, sank onto her plush sofa, the chaos swirling pleasantly around her. Her eyelids felt heavy. The flashing lights and distorted music seemed to warp the figures moving around her apartment. Costumed shapes drifted in and out of her blurry vision, ghosts, zombies, vampires, things less definable. She watched them lazily, a smile playing on her lips. Then a detail snagged her attention, pulling her halfway out of her drowsy state. She blinked, trying to focus. The figures moving through her living room. They seemed to float. She squinted, peering through the gloom and artificial fog. None of them had feet. They glided inches above the floor, spectral and silent, their lower extremities dissolving into shadow. A cold dread, colder than any prank, seeped into her bones. She must have drifted off. Helen blinked awake, disoriented. She was in her bed, the heavy duvet pulled up to her chin. Faint music still drifted from the living room, but it was subdued now. A glance at her phone showed it was nearly 3 a.m. The last few stragglers must be leaving. Sitting up, she swung her legs over the side of the bed, the floor cold beneath her bare feet. Standing alone in the now quiet apartment, a different kind of chill settled over her. The leftover decorations seemed less festive, more menacing in the silence. The skull seemed to watch her. The cobwebs felt real. The space, her brand new, hard-earned sanctuary, suddenly felt alien again, crowded. Not with friends, but with an unseen presence, a feeling that many people had occupied the space for a very, very long time. Shaking her head, she dismissed it as post-party jitters and exhaustion. She padded into the bathroom, eager to wash away the night, the makeup, the sweat, the lingering unease. The harsh bathroom light was unforgiving. She started with her face, the makeup remover stinging slightly. As she wiped away the fake blood and bruises, the skin underneath felt tender. Odd. She moved to her arms, scrubbing at the dark smudges. A sharp sting near her elbow made her wince. Looking closer, her blood ran cold. Beneath where the most prominent fake bruise had been, her skin was genuinely discolored, a deep, ugly purple blooming beneath the surface. It hurt. Panic fluttered in her chest. Maybe I hit it on something during the party. I was clumsy dancing. She tried to rationalize, scrubbing harder at another painted-on scratch on her shoulder. Again, a real sensation of pain, and underneath the makeup, faint red lines like actual scratches were visible on her skin. Frantically, she checked the other areas where she'd applied the injuries. They were all real. The bruises, the scratches, faint but undeniable, scattered across her body exactly where she had painted fake ones hours before. She gripped the edge of the sink, her reflection staring back, wide-eyed and pale beneath the remnants of her costume makeup. What was happening? She took deep, ragged breaths, trying to regain control. Okay, I drank too much. I must have stumbled around, bumped into things, scraped against something without realizing it. That's all. It has to be. But the perfect correlation between the fake injuries and the real ones felt chillingly deliberate. Sleep offered no escape that night. Helen tossed and turned, her body aching with a profound weariness that went beyond simple partying. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard whispers, faint and sibilant, seeming to emanate from just outside her bedroom door, like a crowd murmuring in the hallway. Footsteps echoed softly in the living room, pacing back and forth, growing steadily louder, closer. They stopped right outside her door. Her mind felt thick, sluggish, caught between waking and sleep. She lay frozen, every muscle tensed, straining her ears in the suffocating silence. Then a faint sound, click, rattle. The doorknob. Her eyes flew open, but her limbs felt leaden, unresponsive. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Slowly, agonizingly, the doorknob turned. The door creaked open a sliver, revealing impenetrable darkness beyond. A figure stood silhouetted in the gap, indistinct but undeniably present. Something glinted in its hand, long, thick, like a heavy piece of wood or a club. A pair of eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dark, fixed on her. Terror seized her, absolute and paralyzing. An invisible weight pressed down on her chest, stealing her breath. She could only watch, trapped in her own body, as the figure began to glide silently towards her bed. Helen bolted upright, gasping, drenched in sweat. Sunlight streamed through the gap in her curtains. Morning, it was just a nightmare. A horrifically vivid, terrifying nightmare. Relief washed over her so potent it left her weak. But the feeling of dread lingered, heavy and oppressive. Her body ached, her muscles stiff and sore, especially her legs, which felt cramped and leaden. Hesitantly, she checked her arms and shoulders. The bruises were still there, perhaps even darker than before. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just a hangover or party mishaps. Fear, cold and rational this time, gripped her. Something was wrong with her. She called in sick to work, citing a sudden illness, and made an urgent appointment with her doctor. After a series of tests, the doctor looked perplexed. Well, Helen, physically you seem healthy, but your blood work shows mild thrombocytopenia, a low platelet count. It can cause easy bruising, sometimes spontaneous bruising that looks like this." He pointed to the marks on her arm. "Folk legends used to call it ghost bites or devil's pinches," he added with a small, dismissive chuckle. "We'll run some more tests to figure out the cause, but for now, just take it easy." Thrombocytopenia, a medical explanation. Helen clung to it like a life raft. It wasn't ghosts, it was her blood. Still, the timing, the placement of the bruises, it felt too coincidental. She forced herself to go to work that afternoon, wearing a long-sleeved blouse and extra concealer to hide the marks and the exhaustion etched onto her face. She tried asking her friends subtle questions about the party. "Did I seem really out of it when you guys put me to bed? Did I bump into anything?" Liam, Chloe, and Zoe exchanged looks. "No, you just seemed super tired," Chloe said gently. "You were passed out on the sofa, so we just helped you into your room. You didn't seem drunk, just exhausted." No one had seen anything unusual. Work was a welcome distraction, the familiar demands pulling her focus away from the unsettling events. But as she was packing up to leave, shutting down her computer, her gaze fell beneath her desk. Her breath hitched. The floor around her chair was littered with cookie crumbs and empty wrappers, a specific brand of shortbread cookie she actively disliked, finding them to dry. Liam sometimes kept them in the office pantry, but Helen never touched them. She looked around. No one else was nearby. Confused and increasingly unnerved, she quickly swept the crumbs into the bin, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't mention it to anyone. The feeling of being watched, of not being entirely in control of her own actions, intensified. Back in her apartment, the Halloween decorations felt suffocating. Today was October 31st, Halloween itself. The plastic skeletons seemed to leer. The fake cobwebs felt like they were closing in. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was expectant. Helen couldn't stand it. The cheerful, spooky vibe from the party was gone, replaced by something genuinely sinister. She needed to get out. She texted Liam, Chloe, and Zoe. "SOS. Apartment is creeping me out. Need people. Downtown. Drinks?" They met at a crowded bar near a popular pedestrian street already teeming with costumed revelers. The noise, the lights, the sheer number of people provided a temporary shield against the encroaching fear. Helen drank beer quickly, needing the buzz, the oblivion. She felt a strange compulsion alongside her fear, a manic energy. Spotting people with elaborate costumes, she'd impulsively grab them, laughing perhaps a bit too loudly, pulling out her phone for selfies. "Your makeup is amazing. Let's get a picture," she'd exclaim, throwing an arm around a zombie bride or a menacing Pennywise. Her friends watched her with growing concern. This wasn't the usual Helen. She seemed frantic, brittle beneath the forced gaiety. And she kept ordering baskets of bar snacks, specifically zoning in on packets of shortbread cookies from the counter display, eating them mechanically, handful after handful, crumbs dusting her chin. "Helen, maybe slow down on the cookies," Liam suggested gently. Helen looked up, confused. "What cookies?" She glanced down at the half-empty packet in her hand, as if seeing it for the first time. A flicker of fear crossed her face before being quickly masked by a wide, slightly vacant smile. Right, silly me. At some point during the chaotic mingling and photo-taking, Helen got separated from her friends. One moment she was laughing with a group dressed as characters from The Nightmare Before Christmas. The next she realized Liam, Chloe, and Zoe were nowhere in sight. She didn't panic. The alcohol had wrapped her in a fuzzy, disconnected haze. She continued to wander, snapping photos with strangers, the world a blur of costumes and flashing lights. Eventually, feeling dizzy and overwhelmed, she stumbled away from the main throng, deciding vaguely to walk home. The night air felt cold against her flushed skin. She made it back to her apartment building, fumbled with her keys, and practically fell into bed, still fully clothed, makeup smeared across her face. Sleep came instantly, heavy and profound. But then a sound pierced the silence, sobbing. Heartbroken, childlike sobbing filled the room. Helen realized with dawning horror that the sound was coming from her. Tears streamed down her face, racking sobs shaking her body, yet she felt utterly detached, an observer to her own grief. She cried until exhaustion finally dragged her back under, into a deeper, darker sleep. This time, the dream was different. She wasn't being chased. She was hiding, peering from behind her bedroom door into her own living room. A man sat alone at her dining table. He was thin, gaunt, with hollow cheeks and shadowed eyes, nursing a glass of amber liquid. The silence in the room was heavy with unspoken sorrow and simmering anger. Helen watched, frozen, as he slowly drank, his movements deliberate, lonely. Suddenly, his head snapped up. His eyes, burning with a terrifying intensity in his dark, haggard face, locked onto hers. He knew she was there. Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through her. She tried to run, but her feet were fused to the floor. The man rose slowly, deliberately, his chair scraping harshly against the wooden floor. He walked towards her, his steps unnervingly steady. When he reached the doorway, his hand shot out, grabbing her hair, yanking her into the room. He started hitting her, relentlessly, his face a mask of fury. Helen felt trapped in the dream, experiencing the blows, the terror, the utter helplessness. The pain felt sickeningly real. He grabbed the whiskey bottle from the table and raised it high. Helen screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror, as the bottle swung down towards her head. She woke up screaming, tears blurring her vision. The phantom pain in her head was excruciating. The dream clung to her, vivid and terrifyingly intimate. It was almost 3 a.m. again. Her throat was parched. Shaking, she sat up, needing water. As she swung her legs out of bed and stood, a wave of intense dizziness washed over her. The room tilted violently. She staggered, reaching out for balance, but her legs gave way. She crumpled to the floor, her head hitting the carpeted ground with a dull thud. Her vision blurred, tunneling. The world shrank to the patch of floor directly in front of her face. Her ears roared. As consciousness threatened to slip away entirely, she saw them. Standing directly in front of her, almost touching her face, was a pair of small, bare feet. They were pale, almost luminous in the dim light filtering from the window, the toenails chipped and dirty. The feet shuffled nervously, restlessly, rubbing against each other. They belonged to a child. Just as this thought registered, the sharp, insistent ringing of her apartment doorbell cut through the haze. The small, pale feet instantly stopped moving. They turned towards the door, hesitated for a second, then darted away with impossible speed, vanishing into the shadows of the hallway. The doorbell rang again, more urgently this time. Slowly, painstakingly, Helen dragged herself up. Her head throbbed. Her limbs felt disconnected, but the sight of those feet, the reality of them, had shocked some adrenaline back into her system. Leaning heavily against the wall, she made her way to the door and peered through the peephole. Liam, Chloe, and Zoe stood outside, their faces etched with worry. She unlocked the door, pulling it open weakly. "Hey," she managed, her voice raspy. "Helen? Oh my God, are you okay?" Chloe rushed forward, steadying her. "We've been calling you for hours. What happened last night?" Liam stepped inside, his eyes scanning the apartment, then settling on Helen's disheveled state. "You just disappeared. We looked everywhere. We got worried when you didn't answer your phone, so we decided to come check on you." As they recounted their version of the previous night, Helen's strange, frantic energy, the obsessive cookie eating, her abrupt disappearance into the crowd. Helen listened in growing disbelief. Her memories were fragmented, hazy, but she distinctly remembered wandering off alone, taking photos and walking home. Nothing about frantic behavior or running away. That's not how I remember it," she stammered. "I was just taking pictures with people in costumes, look." She fumbled for her phone, needing to prove her version of events, needing to anchor herself back to reality. She opened her photo gallery, scrolling to the pictures from the night before. The first image appeared. Helen froze. Her friends leaned in, looking over her shoulder. A collective gasp filled the small entryway. The photo wasn't of Helen grinning next to a vampire or superhero. It was Helen, phone held high in a selfie pose, beaming manically next to a weathered granite headstone in a dimly lit cemetery. Her eyes looked wild, unfocused. She swiped to the next picture. Another selfie, this time with Helen draped over a crumbling mausoleum, the same disturbing energy radiating from the image. Photo after photo showed her cavorting among graves, posing with tombstones in the dead of night. The nearby city cemetery, she had no memory of going there. The phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto the floor. The stark, undeniable evidence of her lost time, her bizarre behavior captured in pixels, shattered the last vestiges of her rationalizations. Reality warped. The air grew thick, heavy. Helen's eyes rolled back in her head. She began to tremble, her limbs jerking uncontrollably. A low moan escaped her lips as she collapsed, convulsing violently on the floor. Her friends reacted instantly, trying to hold her still, to prevent her from hurting herself. But Helen, usually slender and not overly strong, thrashed with unnatural power, pushing them back. Liam, remembering old stories his grandmother used to tell, fumbled at his wrist, pulling off a simple wooden bead bracelet he always wore, one blessed by a monk years ago. Seeing an opportunity as Zoe and Chloe struggled to hold Helen's flailing arms, Liam grabbed her hand and quickly slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Helen's convulsions intensified violently. A guttural shriek tore from her throat, inhuman and chilling. Her back arched off the floor. They quickly wedged a rolled-up towel between her teeth to stop her from biting her tongue. The struggle felt desperate, primal. Then, as suddenly as it began, the violent seizing stopped. Helen went limp, her body slumping onto the floor, boneless and still. She lay there, breathing shallowly, eyes closed. Liam, pale but resolute, acted quickly. He gathered the prop gold coins and amulets Helen had used for decoration, found a bruised apple and the leftover cookies from the counter, and arranged them on a plate in the center of the living room. He lit one of the decorative fake candles, the small flame flickering uncertainly. Taking a deep breath, he spoke into the quiet room, his voice low but firm. If there's any spirit in this place, not invited, not welcome, accept this small offering and please leave this home and leave our friend in peace. He then walked to the front door and opened it wide, letting the early morning light spill into the hallway. They waited, holding their breath, listening to the silence, watching for any sign. Nothing happened. Chloe gently shook Helen's shoulder. "Helen, are you back?" Helen's eyes fluttered open, but the gaze within them wasn't entirely her own. It was distant, childlike, and filled with a profound sadness. Tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks. A small, choked voice, utterly unlike Helen's usual tone, whispered, "Cookies." "Want cookies?" Understanding dawned on them. The cookie obsession. It wasn't Helen, so we quickly fetched the packet of shortbread cookies, offering one gently. The hand, Helen's hand, still wearing Liam's bracelet, took the cookie and brought it to her mouth, eating with a desperate, famished urgency. The bracelet seemed to anchor the presence, preventing it from fleeing or fully retreating. Liam knelt beside her. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "Why are you and our friend Annie?" The small voice whimpered around a mouthful of cookie. "How old are you, Annie?" 10. A child ghost. A lost soul. Their hearts ached. "Annie, why did you come here? Why are you holding on to Helen?" Fresh tears streamed down Annie's face. Cause she let me in. She put out treats for Halloween. I saw her. The decorations, the scattered grave goods, Helen's attempt at spooky ambience had been interpreted as an invitation by a wandering spirit. "But why Helen?" Chloe asked gently. "There were lots of people here." Annie hesitated, her small voice thick with sorrow. "'Cause she's like me. Sad. Her daddy, he hurt her too." The air went still. Helen's carefully guarded past, the trauma she never spoke of but which subtly shaped her, the ghost child had sensed it. Helen's father, fueled by alcohol, had been abusive. The bruises, the fear, it was a pain Helen carried deep within her, a pain that had resonated with this lost child. The disturbing Halloween costume, the bruises she meticulously painted on herself year after year, it wasn't just a costume. It was a ritual, a way of externalizing, perhaps even reliving that buried pain. Annie had recognized a kindred spirit marked by the same darkness. What happened to you, Annie? Zoe asked, her voice barely a whisper, a choked sob. Daddy, he was drinking. He got mad. He hit me with the bottle. A collective wave of horror and pity washed over the friends, killed by her own father. They later pieced together more fragments, whispered by the childlike voice clinging to Helen. The father went to prison. The mother lost her mind to grief and vanished, leaving no one to remember or care for Annie's spirit. She became a wanderer, drawn to offerings, drawn to echoes of her own pain. Helen's apartment, filled with Halloween treats and the psychic resonance of Helen's own hidden trauma, had become an irresistible beacon. The bruises appearing on Helen's body, the crushing headaches, the nightmare of the man with the bottle, they were Annie's agony, bleeding through, amplified by Helen's own suppressed memories. Liam spoke again, his voice gentle but firm. Annie, listen. You can't stay here. You're hurting Helen. Staying tethered to the living world, it only brings more sadness. You deserve peace and being alone out here. Other spirits, angry ones, they might hurt you. Annie's weeping intensified. There are places you can go, Liam continued, thinking quickly, simplifying the concept. Places of peace, like a church or a temple. Places where people pray, where there's light. They can protect you, help you move on, find rest. He spoke of peace, of release, of letting go of the pain. He talked until the childlike sobbing slowly subsided. Helen's body relaxed completely, her breathing evening out. After a long silence, a final, faint sigh escaped her lips like a release. Then she was still. They didn't wait. As the first rays of true dawn painted the sky, they helped Helen, weak and dazed but herself again, out of the apartment. They drove her to a quiet, unassuming old church nearby, its doors open for early morning service. As Helen stepped across the threshold into the nave, a wave of intense heat washed over her, making her gasp. Her skin prickled, breathing became difficult, and her head pounded fiercely. It felt like being burned from the inside out. Liam and Chloe supported her as she stumbled to a pew, sinking onto the cool wood. She closed her eyes, focusing on the faint sound of organ music drifting from somewhere deeper within the church. Slowly, gradually, the burning sensation subsided. The pressure in her head eased. Her breathing returned to normal. A sense of profound calm settled over her, replacing the terror and confusion. Liam pressed his wooden bead bracelet back into her hand. Keep this, he said quietly. Annie, I think she was ready to let go. She was gentle, just lost. I think she understood. Helen never wore that Halloween costume again. The bruises faded over the next few weeks, though the memory of their appearance remained vivid. She eventually sold the apartment, unable to shake the feeling of unseen eyes, the echo of childish footsteps. She continued therapy, finally addressing the deep-seated trauma from her childhood, the pain that had unknowingly acted as a beacon for a lonely, suffering spirit. On quiet days, especially around Halloween, she would visit that old church, light a candle, and say a silent prayer for Annie, the little girl whose tragic fate had become inextricably, terrifyingly intertwined with her own, a spectral tenant brought in by the thinning veil and the echoes of shared pain. And sometimes in the stillness, she felt not fear, but a faint sense of peace, a shared release into the light. We hope you found tonight's story, The Halloween Tenant, suitably unsettling. It highlights the delicate balance between our world and whatever lies beyond, a balance that can be easily disrupted on nights like Halloween. May your own encounters with the spectral be limited to the realm of storytelling. Until next time, from all of us at Sleepy Horror Tales, may your nights be filled with only the sweetest of nightmares, or perhaps none at all.
Is it the wind or a ghost?